Welcome to the Company Move podcast, where we explore what life outside of the film and television industry could look like by talking to folks who have made the leap. I'm your host, Rennie Pollack, a union second assistant camera person currently living and working in Chicago, Illinois. I'll be learning and growing along with you, so let's go. Company's on the move. Hi, Company Movers. How does that sound for a title for y'all? I wanted to start this episode with a quick trigger warning. There's some discussion of both gun violence and sexual violence in the context of true crime reenactment shows. There's also some light discussion on child abuse in this episode. So just wanted to give y'all a heads up if that is something that you don't necessarily want to hear about. Maybe skip this episode. There's some cursing, and we allow cursing, but just wanted to let y'all know there's going to be some F-bombs in this episode, and I like it. That's it. Thanks, guys. Emma Zbiral-Teller received her BA from Hampshire College with a focus in experimental film and is a recent graduate from Adler University with a master's degree in counseling and art therapy. Her in-depth experiences working with youth in public school systems has offered her insight into the strengths and needs of the communities she serves. She utilizes that knowledge to support youth, families, and communities directly where they're at by using person-centered approaches that create encouraging, honest, trauma-informed, and culturally aware spaces. This approach fosters creative thinking, cognitive growth, mindfulness, social emotional learning, and kinesthetic and sensory processing. She enjoys entomology, plant care, animals, and dystopian sci-fi narratives. Emma Zbiral-Teller, welcome to the Company Move.
Hi, Rennie. Thank you for having me.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll just start at the beginning. Tell me, what was your job in film?
So I worked in New York for about 8 years in mostly indie film. So I was art department. So I did mostly set dressing. So I did mostly set deck on indie films. So features, a couple shows, some commercials, all non-union stuff.
How did you start? How did you get into it? Like, did you go to school for it, or?
Oh man, it's such a good story. No, I went to Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts, Western Mass, a little liberal arts school in the woods, and I started out studying like creative writing, poetry, and like activism and photography, and I thought I was a beat poet and was living this very romantic lifestyle, and I didn't honestly really discover film until college, until undergrad. And like took some film classes and was like, oh, I can like combine everything I love, like words and music and sounds and photography, and like put it all together into one moving image. So I started out mostly in like experimental film and video art. After college, I lived out there for a little bit and then, moved to New York with a bunch of friends on a whim. Just like, fuck it, New York City, we're gonna go to New York, dude. We're gonna make it work. We're all just like grungy artists and stuff. Working at a sneaker shop at the time. And started out by doing PA stuff. I went to a party where in Greenpoint, I had like not a lot of friends yet. It was like my first like few months in New York. I was just like really trying hard to build community, and I went to a friend's show and met Lola Kirk there, who...
Oh, really?
Yeah, you know who she is?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, her and her sisters are like, the whole scene there.
Right.
And we just like, I don't know, we were just kind of like magnets on the dance floor and hung out all night. And she was filming Mistress America at the time, the Noah Baumbach movie that like didn't really go anywhere. You don't have to put that into the final cut.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. I really like Noah Baumbach stuff, but I didn't see that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think she's in what's the one with Gael Garcia Bernal?
The show, Mozart in the Jungle.
Yeah, I really loved her in that.
Yeah. So that's kind of when she blew up. Yeah, she's awesome. We became like good friends for that night. She's like a hard person to keep track of. And I was like, I love making art. I want to be an artist, but I want to make film. I don't really know. She's like, you should do art department. I was like, I should do art department. She's like, I'm working on this thing. I'll like the art director is a great guy. This guy Sam, like, I'll get you in. You can come just like get like I was doing whatever it took to just get on set, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So she got me on set as an extra for a couple scenes where they were filming a show with the dirty projectors.
Very cool.
So I got to like hang out with them, which was very cool. I found the, art director on set and just like harassed him, basically. And until he, like, I got his number, I got his email, met him in person, was just like, hire me, hire me, hire me, hire me, hire me. I don't care what it is. Like, you don't even have to pay me. Just like get me in. And eventually he was like, fine, just leave me alone. So I did one day on that set, and that set was shooting in the production designer's house, who was this awesome guy, John. He's an incredible production designer, and we became friends, and he brought me on to like everything from the next several years after that. So yeah, so when it comes down to it, it all comes down to that like one stupid party where I just like pushed really hard to get in and met some really amazing creative people, and they were all in the like Noah Baumbach indie world in the city and brought me on. So that's kind of what I did for the following years. And then, it's like once you're on set, it's like you make connections and there's more things, and there's this show and this movie and that commercial and, this and that, and just random connection.
Can you tell me when you started thinking about leaving, or like when was the moment that you're like, this isn't sustainable, I gotta get out?
The last couple of years, it was just kind of like a slow distancing. It was like a toxic relationship that just kind of fell apart, and the work I was doing was just suffering. I was getting more and more stressed. Like my body was deteriorating. I was having all these weird like health issues. I was in physical therapy constantly because my body was killing me. And with non-union stuff, it's like I would be lucky if I could afford an assistant, so it was a lot of physical labor, obviously long hours, with no labor rights because it was all non-union. And I kind of hit the point where it was like, I either need to like get serious about this and like take the test and join the union and be in the, be in the art department and that's, be a set deck and be a set dresser, and that's my life. Or I quit and do something else. And I was working on this horrible show that I will not name. That was like a true crime show, and it's like a recreation show of true crimes, and it was murder porn basically, and it was just like, it was so fucking disgusting and like dangerous, like no, like so many liabilities on set, with like weapons and like sensitive scenes that were not, like the actors were not protected. And I was just kind of like noticing more and more little things that felt very unsafe, both like literally and physically and like mentally and
and then the subject matter is also really intense too. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. And there was no awareness of like how to be sensitive about that, of how to treat a female actress like naked after a rape scene, like cut, all right, nothing. Like I would be the one rushing up to her with a towel because I would look around and be like, where's fucking wardrobe? Like, where's the assist? Like, you're just cutting and she's sitting shivering naked in the bathtub with fake blood all over her, like crying because she's so fucking traumatized. So I'd find myself like doing all these different roles just to like take care of people because nobody, it was so unhealthy and it was really sad. And I think what really did it was, there was this one night we were shooting in a cornfield in Jersey, like an overnight shoot. And it was exhausting and it was far out in the middle of nowhere. And I was doing I was dressing the blood on the ground. So I had like, fake blood everywhere. And I came home, 4 or 5 a.m., didn't take a shower, just like collapsed into bed and woke up with all the fake blood like crusted under my fingernails. And that was the night of the Pulse nightclub shooting where there was like, I don't know, 50, 60 people mass murdered. And it's like not connected, but like I read that headline as soon as I woke up and then like looked at my hands and I had all of this like blood on my hands and was like, I did this, obviously not, I was sleep deprived, but it was like, what am I doing? Like making quote unquote art for something that is only perpetuating and like glorifying gun violence when like real life issues are happening that like could be direct results of this glorified violence that we see on TV. And I don't want anything to do with that. And that was kind of the like breaking point. I did a couple other jobs after that, like a friend's short film and stuff that was more like passion projects. And just found myself like dreading everything. And I was starting to like just do really bad. Like I was just exhausted and in pain all the time. And so I was doing like the bare minimum, which made my work suffer and like distanced me from any joy that I had left in it. So, so I like, I was 27 and was just like, I'm in too much, like I'm too young to be in this much pain and distress. But I was also still in my 20s and was just like, I can do anything. The world is wide open. I can quit. I could, which was like, not super smart. It was a very like rash. I thought about it for a long time, but it was still a very like rash decision where I was like, fuck this, like, fuck you, fam. Like, this is so unhealthy and you don't care about people and you don't care about women and I'm fucking done. Like, I'm not going to be your bitch anymore. I'm not going to like, I'm fucking done suffering for your fucking craft. It's not my craft, Because also I was doing my own video art on the side. I was part of this really great little video collective where we would like go around and screen video art on the sides of buildings and stuff, like guerrilla art. So I would be working all week on these like abusive productions, and then all weekend I would be like putting on these video installations and stuff. So I was kind of living these two different lives. One was like very creative and fulfilling, and one was just like toxic and abusive and exhausting, but addictive. Like I couldn't really stop. So to get myself to stop was like probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life was walk away from that because I loved it.
Right.
I loved the abuse.
I know. I'm in it still. So I
mean,
kind of 100%
relate.
I'm
married to a camera operator. Like I see it, I get it still, I feel it still. And it's just like, fuck, like there's so few like careers where you have that bond and that camaraderie with people where you're all like working so hard. You haven't slept, you haven't eaten, you haven't peed in hours, but you're all in it together, but you're all doing very different things for the same goal. And you're all just looking at one frame, and I'm just looking at little things out of place and everyone's doing has their one thing they're looking at. And it like creates this cohesive vision. So I miss that a lot. And I know the feeling of like suffering for it because it felt worth it, but it got to a point where it just wasn't worth it anymore.
Yeah. That camera operator husband of yours is a coworker of mine.
Yes, he says hi. He misses you.
Uriah is the best. If I can only work with him, if I have to continue working in this business, I would be very, very happy. And that's how we know each other.
Yeah, he's a good team player.
Great team player. So you still get to hear about what happens on set.
Yeah, I live vicariously through his suffering.
Yeah. Did you know, like, did you have something in mind that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I was also doing a lot of like nannying and stuff. I love kids. I've always been around kids and I've always like worked with kids in some capacity. And I wanted to just make art with kids. And kind of as soon as I was starting to think of quitting, a friend of mine had a position opening up at this after school program in Queens, after school arts program. And I was like, that's perfect. So I applied for it and bombed my interview because I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never taught before. And then suddenly, like, I'm in front of a classroom of like 30 12-year-old Queens kids who are just staring at me. I'm like, let's make a film, we'll make a movie, let's make a film. And they're like, what, how, what? So it was not great. But then as soon as I like left, I like realized all the potential that could be done with kids and filmmaking. And when I was in high school, I interned with Facets.
I do know Facets, yeah.
Here in Chicago. Yeah, they're so awesome. And I was their like marketing intern, I think, for a summer for high school credit. But one thing we did was they have like a kids film camp where like you make a film with kids and you have like a little 6-year-old holding a boom mic and quiet on set. He's got the clapper.
So
it's
cute.
just like so cute. And so I like led that with them and never really forgot about that experience. So I kept thinking about it and wrote an email to the director or whatever, and was like, I know I bombed. That's not like, I'm really stressed right now.
Was your interview getting in front of kids and trying to teach them?
Yes.
That was like, they just threw you in the fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he sat with me and talked to me for a bit and then was like, all right, we're going to do like a mock, like session or whatever, go teach these kids some art. And I was like, okay. And like totally bombed it. But then like had all these great ideas from that because I didn't know what to expect. It was like, I have no idea what this thing is going to be. So then I was like, all right, a classroom of kids. What can I do with that? Came up with a lot of different ideas of like a music video club and a little set building club and stop motion and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, great. You got it. And so I got hired and worked for them for not long, only like a year and a half, but it was all after school, so that each class was like considered a little club. So we had a set building, like a miniature set class.
Oh, that's fun.
We would make little miniature sets out of recycled materials, shoe boxes and stuff. We had a music video club, which one of those films actually is up on my website. I'll send it to you. It was like, that was...
Oh, awesome. I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, that was life-changing. Had a friend who was a, DP, and he brought his Red camera in and like did an actual like, camera operating workshop with them.
Oh, that's so cool.
Little like 12-year-olds operating a Red camera. It's just like so fucking cool.
That's probably core memories for those kids too, of being able to like touch a
real
movie camera. I'm not a huge fan of the Red, but it's a movie camera.
Yeah, well, this was 2014 or something.
It's when it was
20,
brand new.
26. This was 2016. Yeah, so it was like all the rage. It was like, wow, so everything's so saturated and poetic.
Yeah.
Did a lot of those little clubs and classes, and that was totally life-changing. There was like 2 weeks into my job there. I hadn't even done any like trainings or anything. A girl sat down with me and talked to me about all the abuse she was getting at home, and like we sat and like cried together, and I ended up having to call child services, obviously, and it was like a whole thing. Just like that was kind of the moment where it was like, obviously this sucks. It was like the worst thing I've ever dealt with, but like I can help this kid, and the fact that they're able to like be this open and this vulnerable with me after knowing them for 2 weeks, it's like a really good sign that this is where I'm supposed to be and that there's like a need here. Whereas like in film, it was like I didn't feel like myself anymore. I was like, I'm not needed here. Anybody can do this job. Like anybody can dress the blood from this gun like this. I'm not needed here. My personality is not shining here. Whereas this other very real, it felt like very real. It's like, oh, this is real life, and I can actually like make a difference to make things better for people.
Did you have training on how to do like trauma-informed care? No.
No, none. And obviously since then I've had a ton. I'm now like, I have a master's degree and stuff, but then.
What do you do now?
I'm an art therapist. So I work with Open Studio Project. Shout out to them, a little 5-person nonprofit. We do a lot of like social emotional learning. I work with kids mostly, but we work with a homeless organization. We work with a blind organization. I work with the Evanston Vet Center with women veterans. I do a lot in CPS, which just started up this week, but we'll be starting there not for another month or so until they like get their shit together. We do a lot in like this, it's based in Evanston, so we do a lot with the school districts over there and like after school programs. So it's a lot of like big group stuff. And then we also do individual therapeutic art. So I have like families I work with and individuals and stuff who come by the studio.
Very cool. So let's backtrack. How did you get to become an art therapist? It sounds like you were inspired and, talking to the kids in the program in Queens that needed your help. How did you then take that into becoming an art therapist?
The pandemic, man, it really changed everything. I mean, I ended up quitting that job because couldn't focus on one thing for more than 10 minutes at that time in my life, like always moving around, always doing 1,000 things at once. But I also like was completely overworked and underpaid, and I couldn't. It was a part-time job, but we had to like write lesson plans in our off time and commute an hour, and it, was too much work for not enough like financial payoff. Obviously, emotionally, that was another one of the hardest things I've had to do, was leave that job, because the kids got attached to me super fast, and they all have abandonment issues, so that didn't didn't help with that. But that at that point I was like, I'm going back to film. I'm going to be a director this time though, and I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to write my movie. Which, like, when you're in a sphere of people, of a career, and you just like shift positions, like it doesn't work. They're like, no, you're an art director. It's like, no, I'm a writer now. And they're like, okay, what have you done? I'm like, well, nothing, but I can do like script supervising. And they're like, okay, we have someone for that. So that didn't work at all. And for like the several months before the pandemic, was just like treading water, was just doing odd jobs, was serving at a restaurant, which is even more abusive than the film industry. Street catering jobs, nannying jobs, like anything that I could get my hands on to just get me through paying rent in Brooklyn. I was traveling around a lot. All my credit cards were compounding, having amazing adventures. Sat on the jury at this incredible film festival in this tiny town in Tuscany.
Ooh.
It's like one of my most memorable weeks. It just wrapped up for this year, actually. Because I didn't have a career to follow at the time, I was just like pulling at all of these little adventurous threads that I could find, and was making, really cool video art and running around the world following people and making movies and writing stories and poems and living a very poetic lifestyle. But then like going back to my hostel and splitting like all of my like food money between 5 different credit cards,
Right.
like not sustainable. And then the pandemic hit, and it was immediately like an overnight transition of just like.
Were you in Italy during the pandemic, or you were back in New York?
Yeah, and it hit like about 6 months after I got back. It hit, and I had just moved into a new apartment in Crown Heights and was gonna just like make it work, and then the pandemic hit, and all my credit cards started compounding, and I got on government aid, which was great, and the most money I've ever made, and that honestly pulled me out of debt. But I was sitting in my apartment, just like, I made a little film series about these little like stop motion monsters that all like struggled with emotions. And so I started like art therapizing myself, just like sitting in my bedroom learning different crafts and like processing the world and pain and feelings, and watching. Like, I lived next to a like a rehab facility, kind of like a retirement home, and after, the first week or so, those trucks with the big coolers, the semi trucks, where they were just using semi trucks as coolers for bodies.
Oh,
And I was just watching the coolers like pile up on top of each other in this parking lot. And I was just like sitting in my room,
wow.
just like, man, yeah, just smoking weed and like staring at the parking lot, like just dead bodies in there.
There's death right next door, literally.
Yeah, it was intense
That's
and
so heavy.
super heavy. And my brother and his wife were living there; they still live in Brooklyn, and we were like discussing, like, he's a musician, and so like he freelances too, and it's like, we don't, the fuck are we gonna do? Like, this is not sustainable. Like, our government aid and like all these random grants and stuff are not going to last forever.
Right.
So we made kind of like a split second decision and moved back home, from Evanston. My parents have a big, beautiful house in South Evanston by the lake. And like the neighborhood I was in was just like concrete, like it was not Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. It was not the Brooklyn with like Prospect Park and the nature
Right.
and the trees. It's a lot of wealth in Brooklyn, but I was not in that neighborhood. So it was just like really depressing where I was, and I kept thinking of my like childhood house and
Oh,
like the lawn and the garden and the trees and the birds, and it was just like life or death. Like, I didn't say bye to a lot of people. This is like what all of my therapy sessions are still about. It's like processing
right.
that choice, because it was an overnight, just like, oh, I gotta grow up. Okay. Turned 30 that year and was like, all right, gotta go. Like, I bottled up all my emotions, rented a car, got a subletter for my apartment, got a bunch of like drugs for my cat, which he would not take, and ended up being a nightmare in that car ride. Like crawling on the dashboard as I'm like in a hailstorm. He like crawled out of the window once to get to the like toll booth operator, the Jersey. It was pretty funny. Yeah, like packed up all my plants, said bye to a few people. Like so many people were in that state of suddenly, like, all of a sudden you're thinking about your parents.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're thinking about your family. Where are they and where am I
Mm-hmm.
and how can I get to them? And then
I think I FaceTime my dad almost every day during the
yeah,
pandemic.
yeah,
That's why, I mean, that's also why I'm living in Chicago again, is because thankfully, I was in Los Angeles where I had, outdoors. And
yeah,
I think about a lot folks living in, New York and Chicago in this like city where there was just like,
ugh,
you're stuck in your
not
apartment
fun.
and you hear people next, like you just,
Yeah,
it was a lot. But yeah, I realized how far away I was if anything were to happen and how hard it would be to get home to help. And
exactly.
that was the big impetus for me to move back to Chicago.
Exactly, same. And it was like my mom had just finished up like cancer treatment,
Wow.
and it was
Oh,
like
wow.
my dad is, it was thyroid cancer, so like very survivable.
Sure, but with COVID, that was, yeah.
Right. It was like, we don't know. We don't know what the fuck this thing is. Like, I would have a panic attack and be like, it's COVID,
Yeah.
I'm dying, and it'll be a freak death, and no one will understand what it is ever, and I'll be that one person,
Yeah. Did your brother and his wife ride with you? Did you rent a car and all three of you moved?
No, it was just me. But they came a month later, and so we were all me, my brother and his wife, and my cat, and both my parents were living in our childhood house for. I was there for 2 years. They stayed for about 6 months. So when it was like very peak, acute COVID, like no vaccines yet, you're masking everywhere, you're like wiping down your
Yep.
groceries, wearing gloves everywhere. Like, everyone's just completely terrified of
Yeah.
being in contact with other people. But those months leading up to that, I was just kind of sitting in my apartment and was like, all right, this is what everyone is like, looking at their lives, looking at their set of skills that they've acquired, and like, what can I do? Both like with my time and like, how can I help this situation? How can I like alleviate all of this pain we're seeing and hearing every day? And I thought about the work that I'd like done with kids, and I thought about like how fulfilling that was and how much I missed that work and how helpful it was for people and for me. I don't know how I heard about art therapy at that point, because it's still a very niche thing. It's been around since the like late '60s, pretty much, but it's not like a well-known career path, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I don't know. I think I just started making art, and it became very like therapeutic art, and then I don't know. Then I kind of was just like art therapy, kind of like I don't know. It just came together very smoothly, and I looked up grad schools for art therapy, and there's really only like a handful in the country, and one of the best ones was in Chicago. So I kind of saw it as this sign. It was like, well, like fuck it, why don't I go to grad school and like take out more loans? You know, still paying off undergrad, and told myself I would never go back to school, but circumstances changed. I was like, I have no fucking like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what else to do, and I would like to do that job again, but in a more professional
Right.
way. I wanted, because I was also like, after I quit that job, I was like, I need something bigger and better and like full time, better paid benefits, but you needed a master's degree for all that
Right.
stuff. And I like didn't have any credentials. So I was like, all right, it's time to get serious. Like, if I want to actually like work with kids and do therapeutic work and help people, and like go to school for it and figure it out. Don't worry about the money, get grants, get loans, get scholarships, and learn something new and put it to use, and then like be able to have an actual sustainable like career path. Like, imagine that.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I have technical questions. Tell me about getting into grad school. Like I'm a 5-year-old. Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah. Well, I took a year of prereqs because they were basically like, okay, great, like you sound great and this sounds like great for you. Like, are you an artist? It's like, yeah, I'm a video artist and a poet. It's like, okay, but like, do you know how to use a paintbrush? It's like, yeah, totally, you
Mm,
know, like, yeah, which is like, no, I was never really a visual artist, but you need to like know the basics. So they're like, all right, why don't you like take some prereq classes and then like get back to us, because you can't get in, can't even get your application through the door if you don't have a certain amount of credits that are both in like studio art and in some sort of like counseling class, like psychology classes. So, Oakton Community College.
was this talking to like did you call and have a conversation? Like you had to apply, I'm assuming,
Yeah,
first.
yeah, I applied. Well, it's like you send in like initial inquiries and stuff. I don't remember how it went, but I got put in touch with a very nice lady, because like they want people, like
Right.
they want people in their doors. Um, so they were very like receptive and were like, you seem, Adler is a very like social justice oriented type of place, and they were like, you seem like the perfect fit, but you're not going to get in without these like very basic um, classes and things that you need to learn. So I did a year of virtual prerequisites at Oakton Community College, which is an amazing educational institution that I wish I'd utilized when I was younger. Took a bunch of psychology classes and studio art classes, which was so hard. Had a really hard time.
Oh yeah, because it was still during the pandemic.
Yeah, it was still peak
Yeah.
pandemic. That was 2020, um, crossing into 2021. So like shit was hitting the fan. Election,
Mm-hmm.
was happening. Like, it was crazy. And I was like developing a lot of funding anxiety. Honestly, that year was harder than grad school, because it's like a traditional, community college, but a traditional institution where it's like you have to write papers and take tests and stuff. And I went to Hampshire, which was very no tests, no grades. Still very difficult because you'd have to write like, a dissertation, and you'd have to do a final project and all this work. But it wasn't like, I wasn't a test person. So this was very like, there was homework every night and modules that you had to complete every day. And I was doing 6 classes, I think. So it was like, it was hard. it was a really hard year. I'm living in my parents' basement, my childhood house, like
Yeah.
having all of these insane, just like, you know, feelings.
Yeah.
A lot of feelings. But yeah, did it, got through it, got all the credits I needed to get, and had a really good application and got accepted 2021, I guess that was. So, yeah, then did 2 years at Adler. So it was a lot of, it's pretty much split with like studio art, learning different art techniques, different like modalities and materials and projects that all have some sort of like therapeutic aspect to
Mm.
them, whether it's like kinesthetically or emotionally, like, you're creating something that represents your inner emotional landscape or your trauma or, some narrative experience, or it's literally just like therapeutic to be like squeezing something or holding something or throwing something. So it was half that, and then a lot of history of art therapy classes, knowing and learning the medium, a lot of psychology, ethics, trauma care, things like that.
So you were obviously saving on rent, living at home, thankfully.
Yes, I was.
How did
Yeah.
you like, did you have a job during this time, or like how did you sustain yourself? That's like, because I'm asking
I was,
personally because I'm thinking about
yeah.
possibly going back to school, and my biggest fear is not being able to survive my life.
I don't fucking know. Sorry, I'm swearing a lot, but I don't know how people do it. I really don't. Like, I was going to school and made friends and had peers who were like paying rent. I was like, but you're here. I see you here every day. Like, so it's either you have like family money and you're getting a lot of help, but a lot of them, a lot of them were in their 20s and had family help, and a lot of them were,
Hmm.
my age, making a career change, and were like going to their neighborhood to work their job and work, at a bar at night, or work at a restaurant on the weekends and work part-time, which I thought was insane, because it was so hard and stressful already to be in school full-time, and then to have to make money on top of that was insane. But I did. So the place I work at now, Open Studio Project, is literally 3 blocks down the street from my parents' house. So when I was living at my parents', I was doing random stuff in the neighborhood. Like, there were a couple neighbors that had kids that were like going through some emotional distress, and so I would like make friendship bracelets with them and stuff, and work on. So I kind of got to like do some therapeutic art, practice my craft in that way, and kind of like a low stakes neighborhood vibe. But then I started walking by Open Studio Project for a while and was just like, what is this place? And kind of just wandered in. And a neighbor of ours, my mom's best friend, is an artist, and she had a show there. So it's a gallery space and a studio space. And so she put me in touch with the people there, and I just kind of like wandered in and started volunteering, organizing art supplies and stuff like that. And at that point, it was still pandemic, so everything was virtual. So I was helping them like put together different art kits to like send off to schools that they would then do these virtual workshops with. And then, yeah, pretty much after a year of that, well, I guess it was probably less than that. You have to do like some trainings, like facilitator trainings and stuff like that. And then they started paying me to teach classes and stuff, and to go into schools with them once I kind of got to know their curriculums. And then after a year or two of that, I pretty much demanded that they bring me on staff full time
Yeah.
as an art therapist once I was done with school, because it was, yeah, it's like, I don't know what else. I don't know what else to do. And I was already working with them. I didn't want to like try applying to other places where I'm just cold calling them and I don't know them. And so it was like a real neighborhood spot that I got to know super well. And now we're just like this little
It
family.
all comes full circle. That's how you got on set. You made friends, and you went for what you wanted.
Yeah, and I end up back on Monroe Street in Evanston, like right where I was born. It's like so weird, but I don't have a problem with it. Like, I don't know. I In my 20s, when I would come home, I'd be like, Chicago, like, it's not New York. It's
Mm.
so slow and nobody cares. by anything. It's so behind and nothing's cool. And I'm like, my childhood home, all these memories, so lame and boring or dork, and it's like, I don't know, the pandemic really, or just growing
I
up.
think it's probably growing up. I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
you want to
beautiful there.
oh yeah, Evanston's gorgeous.
I don't, yeah, now I'm just like, I'm walking around the same streets I did when I was rollerblading when I was 7, and it's just like, this is so beautiful. And there's trees, and everybody's nice. And like, I will never forget the day I moved. So I like drove back from New York, and it took, 13 hours or whatever. I just did it straight. And got home, passed out, and the next morning I had to go like return the rental car. My dad came with me, and I stepped out onto the front porch. It was early. It was like 7 a.m. or something. And the sun was just like blasting. It was June, I think. It was like early June. And the sun was just blasting through all of this green everywhere and these green trees. And it was just like silent. And there was just birds and like the cicadas. And I like burst into tears. Like, I can't believe this has been here the whole time. And I've just been fucking suffering.
Oh.
Like in this city that I love, that I will always love. But man, there's something to be said for just like simple comforts.
Right.
And,
You
like,
also won the parent lottery. I got the pleasure of meeting your parents at your wedding reception a couple weeks ago, and wow, your dad made me cry. It was so sweet.
He's my favorite person. Yeah, so it was like, this is not the worst. Like, this could be so much worse, and so many people have it that way. But like, I have like these great parents, and I have this great family in this like huge, incredible house. It's like old Victorian house. It's filled with art, and in like not far in the suburbs, like in Evanston or right on the train. Like I can go into the city at any time. Like it's completely accessible. There's stuff going on. There's shops, there's restaurants, it's a neighborhood, there's people. Like I'm not remote, not isolated. Right. So it was kind of like, it's like, what? This is not so bad. There's so many worse things, and this is like, have it pretty good. So let's like rejoice in that.
Nice. How do your on-set skills translate to your new job? Like, what can you pinpoint anything that you were doing on set that translated into what you're doing now?
Definitely like people skills. Definitely like so much of that job, and especially like set deck, you're right between, the camera and the actors, so you're like talking both to like, the camera operators about the framing, and like the actors about like move that, object over a fucking inch. So definitely like those like direct communication skills, as well as just like friendly communication skills of like knowing how to be around people. Is definitely something that a therapist has to know how to do, like not be scared of talking to people about like honest things that you need done like in the moment, or that they need done in the moment. That's probably the biggest one. And then of course like art, just like spatial, visual organization, not being afraid to get messy with stuff, not being afraid to learn new crafts. There was one job I did that was a commercial for a teddy bear, like a stuffed animal that's so creepy, that records a voice memo.
Wasn't that Teddy Ruxpin? It must have been a ripoff of Teddy Ruxpin.
It must have been, yeah. This was like the modern version that definitely never went anywhere because I don't see it. Yeah, and it was like the parent can record a video or record an audio message and put it in the stuffed animal, and then it's like motion censored. So when the kid walks by, the parent can like be like, "I see you," like eat your dinner. Which for me was like, where are you though? Where is the parent? Like, is this a place
it's like
of
a dog
parent?
leaving
these are
dog
children
at home alone. You could do that, but a child, there should be some sort of.
Yeah, I did so many weird jobs, but I did art direction for that, and the production designer was like, "All right, we need these devices like put into these stuffed animals." It's what, which doesn't, now that I think of it, doesn't make any sense, but it was a sewing job, and I didn't know how to sew at all. But I was just like, yep, I can do it, totally, yep, yep, yeah, I know, yeah, I got it. And just like overnight, like bloody fingers,
Learned
just
how to
like
sew.
forced myself to learn how to sew so that I can like create these really creepy stuffed animals that I had to like pull stuffing out and put these things in and then stuff it
That's
back
been a
in. And
common thread with everyone I've talked to of like uh not necessarily like lying about our skills, but like I don't know how to do
learning
it
on the
right now, but
fly.
I'm gonna figure it out and
Yeah.
it's gonna be great. And pretty
Yeah. But you
much
don't tell them that
yeah,
first
yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just like,
Like
yeah, I
sure.
can like do yeah, can I do it? Yeah, I can do it. You know? So that confidence for sure. And also with art therapy, it's so much of like getting to know a person and then learning about what like um, different like modalities or projects or supplies would like work for them. You know, so a lot of it is like, oh, there's that one project I did at grad school that I think this person would really love, but I don't know how to do that. But I will learn it
Mm,
and we'll learn together. So it's a lot of like learning on the fly, and learning together, like with people, a lot of like new skill building that I just had to get comfortable with in production, like just learning things really fast and then being confident in them. There's definitely a lot of that in the therapeutic
yeah.
art world because it involves every kind of art making, which I don't know how to
Right.
do. Like I didn't paint, but like I still like, learned watercolors and acrylics and all these different, clay mediums and all these, like felting and all these weird mediums I never would have even approached before. So it would have been like, I can't do that. Like that's hard. And the number one thing I deal with the most with adults, I never deal with this with kids, but always with adults who are like, I'm not creative. I'm not good at art. I can't make art. I don't know. Yeah, I'm bad. I'm bad at art, which is like totally something I would have said back in the day. And now just makes me like furious. Like, I don't want to, you're not allowed to
Right.
say that. I don't want to hear it because you are creative. All
Yeah.
people are creative. It just like the older you get, the more it gets like drummed out of you because we lose that wonder and imagination. And no kid says they're bad at art. Well, some do, and that's sad. We work on that
Right.
in therapy. But
Oh,
kids just, they just live in the
that's a good
moment.
transition to my next question, which is what advice would you give to
Cool.
someone in the film industry who's interested in making a career pivot?
I don't know. How does that relate?
Because a
Can you
lot
give me
of
the
people say they're not good at things. They're not good at art. They're not good at,
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We are all vast potentials of possible imaginative careers and jobs, and it's hard for people to translate their skills and their dreams and their desires and their likes and dislikes into a like payable job
yeah. Mm,
position. And I think people need to get rid of that idea, and just start doing what they love. Well, I don't know, because I don't, or I don't know,
that's a hard
because
one.
start doing what you love. Yeah, but also like I didn't love making art, so it's like I would say try new things, see how it feels, and then Google it.
I like that.
Look, like, go to LinkedIn, see what's out there, see what jobs exist already, and what you think you could do with your current skill set. And if you need to build on those skills, then like get your shit together and go to school for a year. And like that sucks. And when I first realized I had to do that, I was like, no way, I'm not gonna do that. That's a whole year of my life. And I was like, yeah, then it's a year for then like a lifetime of knowledge that will pay off, and I'll be able to have a career where I could have a fucking salary, which I have now that I've never had before, which is like, it's not a great salary, but it's a salary, and it's like, oh my god, no matter what, like I get a paycheck every 2 weeks, even if like that week kind of sucked and I didn't work hard. Whereas in film, it was like, like you don't work hard, you don't make the connections, you don't get the job,
Mm,
you don't get the money. You know, there was one time in New York where I had a car accident. I was on my bike and I got hit by a
mm.
car. I was fine. I mean, it was
Yeah, it's
bad,
still
but I
not
was
not
fine.
great.
but I couldn't work for a bit. I had like a black eye and my hip was, all this internal bruising. I couldn't like walk for 2 weeks, and I like foolishly still did a job that I had booked for like a couple days after that accident, and I did a terrible job because I was fucking injured and my glasses were broken, so I couldn't see. I didn't. So I like went to set. I was like, all right, here's the deal. I had like a black eye and I was limping. I was like, I can't see anything, so like, and I can't lift anything. So I need I need you guys to give me an assistant who can like be my eyes and my body. And they were like, no, we can't do
Yeah.
that. So I like injured myself further by then like working through my injury, and then they didn't hire me again because they just thought that's what I was like all the time, I guess, which was
Yeah.
like not the case. But in the future, when they're like thinking of a set deck to hire, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, that girl that got hit by the car with the black eye who couldn't walk, let's hire her. Like, no. So I never, like, that would have been a great, it was the cooking channel.
That's so frustrating to be judged on like one moment of your life.
Ugh, I know. I was like, clearly this isn't who I am.
Right.
But they don't have time to like think about that. They have someone else they can hire,
Right.
which was why I ended up quitting, because it was like, I don't want to be so replaceable, you know?
Well, there's also that like having to feel like you have to work while you're injured or while you're not feeling your best. And like I worked
Yeah.
on a TV show
Oh
with
my God.
I later found out that I had two complete tears of my rotator cuff and I was just working in absolute pain. And I remember that the I was miserable and I was probably miserable to be around. And the A-camera dolly grip looked
Yeah.
at me one day and he was like, Rennie, go to the doctor, take a day off and go to the doctor. He's like, my wife is pregnant and I'm taking tomorrow off to go to the doctor with her. There are plenty of people who will cover you. And I was like, oh yeah, I could totally.
Oh, right. I have a
I
body
could
that's
totally go
breakable
make
and
a
I need to
doctor's
care for
appointment.
it.
Like it didn't even
Yeah.
occur to me, which is so wild and so like
Yeah.
very much,
You work
yeah,
through it. I mean, that's, who I'm married
yeah,
to, like that's his MO too. It's so hard to watch. Just like, and he's like, well, we got to make rent. It's like, yeah, I guess, but I cannot express enough how amazing of a feeling it is to have a job where I can. I mean, it depends on the day, obviously, if I need to find a sub or whatever, but like, if it's just a day we're working in the office and I'm like, I feel like shit today, guys, I'm going to work from home, or like, I'm actually not going to work at all today. And they're like, okay, rest up. It's also the therapy world.
right.
So it's like self care is like such a big part of it, which film is, it's like the complete opposite. So that was a great moment in grad school when like our homework, the like self-care reflection and like, what are we going to do for self-care tonight? I was like, what are you talking about? I'm going to work all night on this paper and suffer for it. Like, no, you're going to think about your feelings. And it's like, oh, okay. I could do that. That's nice. Immediate shift of like, actually, this is better for me.
Right.
This is way better to like, because it makes me feel obviously good physically, but like it makes me feel what's the word I'm thinking of, like honored or like appreciate. It just makes me feel appreciated because people are like, you're not gonna do your best work today, Emma. Like, go home, get your shit together, like get rest. We're here, and like come back and be the person we know you to
Right.
be. Be your best self. So there's like motivation and encouragement, holding each other accountable, and just like care,
Yeah.
and like people care about your health.
What's that analogy? I think it's a religious analogy of like you have to fill your own cup before you can fill
Yeah,
someone else's.
totally. Yeah, it's like the on the crashing
Oh yeah,
plane,
put
like
your
you gotta
own
pull your
mask on
own
first.
mask on. Yeah, on film it was just like not even a figment of my imagination to think of that. It was just like, nope, gotta do the job, gotta get the money. If I don't do the job, I'm not gonna get the
Mm-hmm.
money. Whereas now it's like, no matter what, I'll still get the money. Like I still get a paycheck. I also work for an organization that's very chill. Like not every, especially like private practices or like sick days you have to apply
Mm-hmm.
for, a certain amount of vacation hours and things like that. And I'm very lucky to have a small nonprofit like team where it's very person centered and I can like do what I need to be a better worker. I don't have to like apply for days
Nice.
off or whatever, or like prove that I'm sick. It's like there's just trust
Right.
there.
I don't even feel like you have to lie about it either. Is there anything that you miss about set?
Yeah, all the camaraderie for sure. The bonds you make with people. There's not a lot of jobs I feel like I've had where I can be both like a person and a work self. It's like you just get to know each other so
Mm-hmm.
well, both like outside the production and inside of it. It's like you're all just the same amalgamation of things. Um, that's, probably the number one thing. It's just like working with people. I spend a lot of time alone now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like working on something together, the collaboration I miss, being a part of, being one part to like a bigger whole, being like a little cog in a bigger
Mm,
wheel or whatever that metaphor is. I spend a lot more time alone now. But that's, yeah, just because this summer was very slow, and fall will pick back up again and I'll be in classrooms of screaming children, germs everywhere. But it's still like I'm on my own in there, like I have people I work with, and sometimes we co-facilitate and co-teach and a co-therapist or whatever, but a lot of the times it's like me and then the client
mm-hmm.
or the class or the group. So it's like I have to be responsible for this whole world,
Right.
the whole picture, the whole vision. Whereas working in film, I was responsible for this tiny little fraction of a bigger picture, which was such a satisfying feeling because it was like, all right, if something got fucked up, it was like, well, me, I did my job.
Uh-huh.
Like,
I did my part.
I do miss like locations, always being in a different place, always having a different commute, and I would just wake up and show up to wherever I needed to be, and it was some random church or cornfield or school or whatever location it was, and it was really kept me on my toes and helped me like explore the city a lot. Got to know so many weird locations, big old houses, and like so many cool prop houses. I miss prop shopping. I miss that. I miss like old New York prop houses.
I should take you down with me to ISS. My friend is the general manager. It's down
What's that?
the prop shop here.
Oh, yes, please. I would love that.
Yeah, I'll take you down there. I haven't seen since she like finished building it out,
Cool. Yeah.
but I'll take you down there with me when I go visit. Do you ever see yourself going back?
Not to that position, but I mean, I would love to. I have like so many scripts I've been trying to write. I really want to like write my parents' story, like their families. I would love to make a feature someday. When I was 20, I made the goal for myself that by the time I was 30, I would have a feature film. It was original and written and directed by me and like shot and in the can by the time I was 30. And I'd be sending it
Mm,
off to Sundance and Con, and turned 30 and the pandemic hit. And I was like, well, I'm moving back home to my childhood bedroom instead. Uh, Life doesn't always
no.
work out how you think it will, but yes, but on my own terms. I don't want to work for anybody. I don't want to be in the art department ever again. Those days are over. I miss it, but that's just not realistic. But I would love to write and direct several features that I have in the back of my mind, and that's just going to take commitment and dedication
Nice.
and energy. Yeah. Yeah, you got me into some good stuff I haven't thought about in a long time.
Oh, good. I hope in a positive way.
Yeah, definitely. Just a lot of many both fond and toxic memories from those
Mm.
years. Yeah,
Well, I
good
hope that you
times.
get to write and direct your own. Well, actually, we'll just manifest that you will and that you'll have a positive, non toxic set full
Yeah,
of amazing people.
yeah. I got to find some I got to just commit to it and then find people to collaborate with who are interested in the same
Hmm.
vision. And that's just going to take a while someday.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a
Yeah.
guest on Company Move. And we'll put all your information about your nonprofit in the show notes.
Thanks, Reddy.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll talk soon.
So after we finished recording, Emma reached out again and had been thinking a little bit more about the question of what advice she would give to folks looking to make a career pivot. So here's a little bit more from Emma.
I would really urge people to just like look around and see where you can be useful. Like, this is our one life, this is our one world, this is all we get. And if you want to spend it just doing something that makes you money and helps you survive, like, that's fine. You can do that. You can totally do that. But I would just urge people to do a little bit more and, you know, engage in some mutual aid. Take a look at, you know, the homeless population in your area. Take a look at people who need food, who need housing. Start volunteering at animal shelters, like whatever, you know, like anything like that will not only like, oh, you're helping people and stuff, like that will bring you energy and that will bring you joy, and you'll feel like you're doing something with your time, and with your life and with your skills. And I urge people to just like examine their skill sets and figure out what their strengths are and figure out where in their community they can use those skills for good. Yeah, that's my added 2 cents as I like, you know, do my little nonprofit job and watch the world collapse around me. In grad school, they taught us, and something we all already know is like you're not going to solve the world's problems, but you can help ease the suffering of one person. You can help one person cope, and they can help somebody else cope. And it's like a trickle-down effect, you know, and eventually like one of those people will solve the world's problems, and you started that. You know, it's a good time to transition into a space where you feel needed, where your skills are put to use, not just to supplement your income, but to like really do something.
Company Move is produced by me, Rennie Pollack, and is produced and edited by Robin Lavecchio. Thanks to Selena Persiani for designing our graphics. Our theme music was written by Cliff Beach and performed by Cliff Beach and Alex Nestor. You can follow Cliff on Spotify. Our interstitial music was composed and performed by Gabe Rosen. A special thank you to Keaton Susky for naming our podcast. Have questions, suggestions, or want to be a guest? Write us at companymovepod@gmail.com. and follow us on Instagram at CompanyMovePod. Please follow and rate us on whatever platform you listen to us on. That's a wrap for this week, y'all. Thanks for listening. Come on back next week for a new episode of the Company Move Podcast.